My name is Gaëlle Palmer. I was born in Douala, Cameroon. I currently am a software analyst for an HR company. I moved to the US, to Virginia, when I was 11 in 2005. I have 3 older brothers and 1 older sister. We are originally from a tribe called the Bamileke tribe. My family moved to Bonanjo, which is a neighborhood in the economic capital of Cameroon, in Douala. I think I was really sheltered from the preparation and the impact that this move would have. And also, I think a big part of it was the fact that I was moving with my entire family. So to me, it was kind of just another adventure with my family, and I was going to be covered because I was the youngest one. But one thing that I do remember very particularly about the move was we were not supposed to talk to anybody about it up until the very last minute. So we had this kind of family gathering either the week that we were leaving or maybe like 2 weeks before we left, when like a lot of the extended family came to our home and in Bonanjo and kind of had like, sort of a going away event. And it was the only time that I realized like, oh, this is actually happening. Like, this is a big deal, because prior to that it was kind of just like, oh, we're doing this thing. Don't talk about it with your friends or even like some of your extended family. You're going to this great new place, and your life is going to be that much better. Part of me not having that realization that this was actually a big deal was because it was like, oh, I'm just packing for this trip, or like this, I'm just going on this event, this adventure, but I'll be back, I'm not actually gone forever. So I think I just didn't have that understanding. I was closing a chapter of my life and starting a new one. It was very much just an innocence of what I was embarking on. We moved to Virginia. That's where we settled. We actually arrived into New York City. So we stayed in New York City for 3 nights before driving down to Virginia. My first memory of America were scrambled eggs. I remember like he made us like, he sat us down for breakfast, and he gave us breakfast, and we were eating scrambled eggs, and I was like, what is this? Why is he giving us this mush that's yellow and like bland, and like, well, I'm not sure what I'm supposed to be eating. That person was also heavily involved with kind of the African diaspora, so he also took us around African clothing shops in New York City. And again, it was just really strange because I was in this very new place, but there were like semblances of familiarity. And again, being with family was helpful to know, okay, I'm not like in this alone, but this is a really strange place and I don't really know what to make of it yet. We stayed in a Motel 8, Motel 6 for a few days after we got to Virginia. That was not part of the plan, and my dad had a connection here in Virginia that we were told somebody was gonna be here to welcome us and get us settled and everything, and that person kind of ghosted us basically. My parents did pretty well for themselves back in Cameroon. They had very stable, like, my mom was an entrepreneur, a very successful one, and my dad had a very good like state job. And then here, she had to work in the back of a kitchen at a diner, and then eventually moved up to working as a custodian in a hotel. And that's just not what I was expecting. I saw my parents struggling a lot more than I was expecting to. I think I was expecting our lives to kind of be mirrored back here after the move, but it was very different, and they were visibly just upset with the struggles that they were going through, and with, trying to make sure that, we had a roof over our head. And I spoke English. I learned English as like an elective growing up in Cameroon. So I spoke English and knew English more than anybody else in my family. Well, maybe my brother. I think my brother also spoke it. He also learned it growing up. So the youngest people of the family were the ones that spoke the most English. And so we had to like translate for them, go to the DMV with them to try to figure out, help them, get documentation and that sort of thing. When we didn't really know exactly what we were doing, and kind of feeling like that pressure of making sure you're filling out forms correctly so that we don't, get in trouble legally, but not really knowing what what we're doing as like children at the time. So that was kind of stressful. It's kind of like the tension, the tension is building, like it's getting more and more obvious that this was a big sacrifice for them that, we're going to have to make up for or work to make it worth it. Not only was I feeling the stress, but then as I was growing older and, trying to rebel more, my parents were vocalizing, the degree to which they put their lives on the line for us and for our education. And so I had to fulfill that. And I internalized that to the point that it's not until I got to college, maybe even graduated college, that I realized I was fulfilling that role and not necessarily pursuing what I wanted to pursue. So what I mean is, after I graduated college, my intention was actually initially to do an internship with a Christian organization at my college, and my parents were extremely against it. They had a whole intervention where they congregated on campus the weekend of my graduation and like sat me down for an entire day. I think it was at least 6 hours of just telling me that I should not do this internship and that I should continue along the educational path, get a master's, get a PhD. I ended up doing what my family wanted, and that's how I decided to do my master's. So I internalized basically that call to excel to the degree that it was not separate from my identity as a person. And I do take it to heart. I do take it to heart that my parents made a sacrifice. And I know, so it's kind of like, because I'm the youngest or whatever, but like, I want to believe that they do know what's best. And so I think that's kind of what led me to, getting a master's, despite me not being sure that that's what I wanted to do. And there has to be some truth to what they want, what they believe. But I think, it's like, but then you're in America, and America's land of opportunity. And so it's like, I think it was definitely rough. Like saying like, I am an immigrant, meaning I spent half of my life in Cameroon, half of my life in this very traditional society. And then I've spent so far half of my life, at the time, it's been more than half now, but at the time, spent half of my life here in this world where it's saying it's all about kind of you and like the very individualistic mindset. And I wanted to hold both of those two worlds like in tension and say, okay, sometimes I'm going to do something that's more individualistic, but then sometimes I'm going to do something that I feel honors my ethnic identity and my family. It's like, I don't think my parents like gave us the opportunity to not succeed at work, at school. And I think if they had, like, there's a very real possibility that like, any of us could have just ended up like on the streets or just being sources of draining, their resources, few resources that they had, especially because we were such a big group. And I think that that's like a very real risk that after spending so many resources to get here, that if we were, focused on our studies or were focused on getting good jobs and kind of giving back to the family, that all of that could have been for nothing. That emphasis on education was important. It was a survival skill. And I'm constantly trying, I am still trying to make the best of being, having been brought here. One way that I know to do that is to make the most of the opportunities that I have here. Even if I'm not going to be the PhD that my parents want me to be, how can I still be a valuable and contributing member of society? How can I make sure that I am cultivating my, myself, the skills that I have, the talents that I have, in a way that maybe I couldn't have done it in Cameroon. Maybe I could have, but this is where I am right now, and I need to make sure that I was poured into, and I need to continue cultivating in the ways that are available to me here. And you can do that wherever you are, because regardless of where you are, somebody poured into you to make sure that you are able to still stand today. And that's one way that I know to make the most of what my parents did. I do have a child now, and it is so important that he knows who made mommy the way that she is, and has that opportunity to stay connected, not just to what's directly around him, but kind of what created what's around him. And I'm still trying to create, some form of legacy that future generations will be able to see as a reflection of, my parents made a leap, made this choice to come out here, and this is the result of that. So I think it's just trying to create a legacy and trying to keep proximity and keep those connections alive.